This is the Balanced Advisor Podcast with Dr. Travis Perry, helping financial advisors like you achieve balance in their lives.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Balanced Advisor Podcast. I'm joined here by Mr. Myles Darby. Alan has been in the wealth management industry for 3 decades. He founded a highly successful firm that was one of the pioneers in assisting accounting firms to get into the wealth management business. In 2012, Alan took a role with United Capital, their new partnership team. As a buyer advisor for United, he led a team that sourced acquisition candidates for the firm. And during his tenure with United, he sourced and closed 32 acquisitions. As a wife, Joanne, of 29 years, and 2 children, Trevor and Elena, Alan lives in Cornelius, North Carolina. Welcome, Alan, to the show.
Hey, welcome. Thank you very much for having me, Travis. Happy to be here.
Yeah, everybody has a different way that they get into the industry. You have an interesting one as well. This path kind of winds a little bit. Maybe you could share us a little bit about how you got into the industry.
Sure. Well, it was probably bumpy more so than winding, but it was a very different pathway to get where I am today. I started in the wealth management business, although I was a biology major in college, and got into financial services because there were really no jobs open when I graduated to get into the pharmaceutical sales field, which is what I thought I was going to do. So I started off actually on the insurance side of the business and gradually made my way into what will be broader financial planning and portfolio management. So I had most notably, I had a practice which we grew largely by acquisition. So, and I kind of stumbled upon that one day when I was trying to think how I could grow, and I came across an ad. I forget I think it was an Accounting Today journal of a small tax practice that was for sale near me, and went down to see the guy, and we didn't transact with him, but it got me thinking this is something that I should probably be doing. And so as we grew our practice, we did 9 acquisitions over the course of my time as an owner of an RIA. So it really got me familiar with, one, how to find, potential acquisition candidates, how to integrate them, help them deal with all the intellectual and emotional ups and downs that come along with thinking about transacting. And then in 2009, I actually sold my business. So I was also a seller, so I got to sit on both sides of that, being a owner of an RIA who did acquisitions, then selling my business. So I kind of came full circle. During that time, I got to know a guy, one of my mentors I think of in the business, a guy named Joe Duran, who was the CEO of United. I met him when he first started United. And because we were dealing with accounting firms too, he wasn't really interested to pursue that, but we stayed in touch. I got to watch him grow. And I had taken about 1.5 years off after I sold my business and decided to get back into the industry. So I decided I was going to go out to where I had custodied before, which was Charles Schwab. They had a conference going on in San Fran, went out there and bumped into Joe in the vendor hall. I literally 30 seconds before that thought, I wonder if Joe Duran is here. He's got to be here. And then he just walks right in front of me. So it was kind of a serendipitous how that worked out. And I shared with him what I was doing. And he said, no, I was getting ready to do, rather, I was going to go start acquiring firms again. And he said, no, we want you to join our new partnership team. So I did that in 2012. Phenomenal 7.5, 8-year run with them. I didn't know it at the time, but I was what was called a buyer advisor because I represented United. I wasn't an employee. I was an independent contractor, but they were my only client. So I was a buyer advisor. I just had never heard of that term before. So when we had a great run, as we shared, I did several acquisitions, I think 32, 33 with them. But when Goldman Sachs bought us in 2019, there was not really much opportunity to continue growing with them via acquisition. So the band kind of broke up. The gentleman I reported to, Matt Brinker, left to go to Merchant Investment Management, and I just took my team out and formed Alaris. So now we do the same work that we did for United all those years. We just represent a lot more clients now, helping them grow by M&A.
Yeah, you're right. There's some bumps in there, but the trajectory stays the same. What you've been doing for all these years is essentially the same, but now you're kind of on the independent realm, right?
Yeah. The bumps, I didn't really give you all the detail of some of the lows. It wasn't all highs, but there were definitely some bumps in there, but I wouldn't take a single day of it back now, given where we are today. I love what we do. I think it's a needed service in the industry.
So Alaris Acquisitions, is that the company name? People can look that up,
Yeah, Alaris
alarisacquisitions.com.
Acquisitions. Alaris means wingman. So we
Oh,
like
yeah.
to think of ourselves as a wingman to both our clients who are the buyers, but then also for the firms who are considering the transaction. We work pretty much like a seller advisor, a typical seller advisor. 90% of the work is spent with them as they go through the journey of considering partnering with one of our clients, but we're just compensated by our clients. So that's where the buyer advisor difference kind of comes in between what you would normally see in a seller advisor, like an investment banking firm or a business brokerage firm, that type of relationship.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thanks for explanation, giving us some detail behind the path. As you've been up and down and back and forth and inside and out of the industry, sold your own firm, you kind of been on both sides. I'm sure you've seen and struggled with and had to come to grips with, what is balance in life? What is this work-life balance? Is it like life-work balance? Is there a balance at all? So I always like to ask this question: what is your definition of balance?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. I guess it would be living, having my actions align with what I say I value. If I can actually do the things that I say are important to me, then that, I think I would be in balance then. Unfortunately, probably the biggest part of my life I've spent out of balance, where, you can say you value like time with family, but because I'm so busy in my work, I'm not spending that time with them. So, which is, part of, when I'm taking firms through the journey of considering an M&A transaction, when you really peel back the onion of like, why are they considering doing this? That is probably the biggest central theme. We call it quality of life, where they are trying to improve certain aspects of their quality of life, however they define that. And essentially, we listen to what they tell us is important to them. And then we go through a process of highlighting for them how they're living in conflict with that. And so our job essentially becomes trying to help them get in alignment with what they say is important. And the vehicle is through a transaction with another partner. So that would be how I define it. Just living out the life that I say is important to me.
Yeah, important to know. I like that. And quality of life is definitely part of that, right? And it's maybe even synonymous to it. I totally agree. As you've seen so many advisors and you've been on the acquisition side and the merger side, what do you see are some of the biggest issues that advisors face in the industry as they're trying to achieve this better quality of life? They're trying to put the important things, as top priority to have balance, to achieve balance.
Yeah, of course it differs, but you look at things that kind of drive people to consider partnering with another firm. There's all the usual suspects, like the monetary reasons. Some firms are trying to get to another level, but the biggest reason is quality of life. And I think there's a lot of things that go into that definition as we describe it anyway, but it typically centers around the reality that most advisors, while they're fantastic people, quality and competent advisors, and care about their clients, they're not the best business operators. They're charismatic people. They inspire leadership where their staff and their clients trust them and follow them. But while those are important traits of being a good business owner, that's not where if you don't have the ability to drive process, and standardization and practice management, all the things that really make a business smooth, let's say, or efficient, you end up running around with your hair on fire, and you're the jack of all trades. All the questions and problems in your practice roll up to you, where you may be dealing with something that not only you can't stand, but it's not your area of competence. And so being willing to, one, acknowledge that reality exists, where some people just won't, but most people, I think, when they hit a period of maturity in their career, are willing to say, okay, I'm a great advisor, but I'm not the greatest at HR or managing technology or managing my people. I can't tell you how many calls I have with advisors when they get to it and you have to take them through several rounds, but they finally admit, yeah, I just don't like managing people. I like the people. I just don't like managing them. And so, the business itself, as great as it is to be an entrepreneur, the business is what's getting in the way of them leading that best life. The irony is we're in the business of helping clients lead their best life. And yet
That's right.
a lot of times we need the advice more than we're giving it to our clients of how to go about that. So the M&A kind of route, in its ideal form, is solving a lot of those problems by removing a lot of the stuff that the advisors just don't like. They're better off just getting out of that type of work and focusing on what they do love, which typically is working with clients, solving complex problems, looking for new clients, or mentoring those who do the same.
Yeah, so true. So it's the E-myth, the entrepreneur myth that Michael Gerber talked about years ago, that here we are getting stuck in the thick and thin of these things that really we shouldn't as an advisor, or we should really learn how to be the business owner. I mean, it exists in so many other different trades. Like if I look at a doctor or a dentist, how many business classes do they actually take?
Yeah.
Right? They don't. Some that get it and are wise might, do some business courses. But when do you see an MD and an MBA to get you just don't see that. Maybe it's a little bit more common in this industry because it's more closely aligned, and a lot of programs to become a financial advisor might come through the business realm. So we might see it a little bit more. But I think that is a really good point. They're great advisors, but not really good business owners most of the time.
Yeah.
And there are exceptions. But they'd rather be working with clients, finding new clients, dealing with complex problems, just like you mentioned. So what do you see as a solution to that? Obviously you help with the end point in this game, and I help more on the other side. But what do you see as those who have navigated these waters, with all the pitfalls involved of being an entrepreneur? What have been a couple of things that have actually worked for those who were really good advisors who became really good business owners?
The ones that I've seen that actually did make the transformation so I'll use the phrase that people have used a lot of times, like lifestyle practice. That is a very popular form of operating. And the way I typically define that is that if you remove the owner or owners from that practice, the business would cease to exist. It would rapidly implode on itself because it's so dependent on that individual or small group of individuals. You've also heard this called institutionalizing your practice, and that sounds like an ugly thing to think about doing, but it's really just removing the business's dependency on any individual. And the reality is, while that's scary for people to contemplate, because it essentially is equated with giving up control, or not feeling like I'm as valuable as I am today to the business. The reality is, when you go through that process of institutionalizing your business, the business becomes more valuable. Right. You become happier. Your staff becomes way happier. And the level of service that your clients are receiving goes up. And so the pathway to institutionalizing your business, I guess, basically is twofold in the realm that I live in. One is you can do it yourself. So you can, as you say, go take the various courses that we've all taken, time management and practice management and all these things. But odds are you're not going to be the one who implements those because it's not in your DNA. And so what you have to be willing to do, if you're going to say, we're going to make these changes to institutionalize our business, is you've got to be willing to make the capital investment in people, whether it's external consultants who actually come in and drive the change, or actual people who you hire to do so. And this is a common fallacy we see when firms, if you look at the industry and, give me some range tolerance here, but we see there's a massive grouping of firms that are 100 million and under. That's probably where the bulk of the industry is. Then we see that break out to where there's another grouping around 200, 250. That's usually when someone's taken on another partner or elevated a client-facing advisor into the role of a partner. We then see another grouping around 500-600 million, and then there's this vast wasteland between 500-600 and $1 billion. There's just not many firms cross that divide. Then they start grouping again at $1 billion plus, as some have made that journey. And the reason I think, is that firms who are lifestyle practices and economically speaking are used to extracting all of the money. They get a new client and it's a $20,000 an additional fee. Well, that's just bottom of a golf club membership or something. So they live out of their business. They don't make that decision to financially invest in it. And the reality is, on your path from $500 million to $1 billion, you're likely not going to make any more money, not much at all. Your enterprise value will go up, but your personal lifestyle won't, because to get there, you've got to make some really transformational type investments into your business. Not many people are willing to do it. So you can get there on your own if you're willing to not only hire people who do it, because you're not going to do it, and make the investments. Or the second route is what I represent, which is the M&A route. So you just join another firm who's got all that stuff and then instantly takes it off your plate and allows you to get there quicker, without having to make the capital investment. So I see that as the challenge in the two routes. And so, really you have to be honest with yourself. Are you willing and able to make those changes and financial commitments to, divest all that stuff that's holding you back and ruining your quality of life?
Exactly. Yeah. As you mentioned before, it's ironic, right? We're here helping as an advisor, trying to help our clients to have a better quality of life. Yet how many of us really struggle? And that's where my expertise is on work-life balance and balance in general. It's just many advisors, too many, are much ado about nothing too many times with their workaholic practices, right? They're trying to do so much that they don't make it home, and they don't do the things they want to do that are on the highest priority. And I agree with you. I think there's a lot to be said about this investment into people. If they can invest in people and build a business so that they're the ones that can leave and not have to be the sole everything, then it goes from a practice to a business.
That's right.
And some, I understand, they want to be there. They want to have that practice, or they've retired, they're doing it part-time. That's not who we're talking about, right? It's the people who are killing it 60 plus, 80 plus hours a week, trying to help their clients, yet they're not investing into their own business.
They control their business, but the reality is the business dominates every aspect of their life.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's their biggest issue with doing an M&A transaction, is losing control. Well, the reality is they have very little control, as the business just has gotten its tentacles into every area of their life. I meet advisors all the time when we're literally having conversations about what it means to partner with someone, and we can't get through 2 or 3 sentences without someone coming in the room, them having to check a message, and I look at them and I shake my head. It's like, if you could actually step back and watch this meeting as a third party and see how distracted you are, because your business that you control is so out of control, you would have an entirely different perspective. But I see that happen all the time.
Yeah. So let's actually go there. Let's talk about control, giving up control. Let's talk about it on a psychological, individual level. Why are advisors so stuck here? I'm not saying every single one, but it is an issue, right? We've got, type A, very, driving, focused type of individuals who are attracted to this field. Why is it difficult for them to give up the control? What is it about that? What do you think, as you've seen and as you've dealt with so many advisors?
I mean, my guess is that they equate giving up control with placing their business at risk, whether their clients, there would be a degradation in services, commitments that they've made to their team would go unfulfilled, so they equate, in the M&A world anyway, they equate giving up control with those sorts of nightmarish scenarios. The reality is that is an extreme rarity for those types of things to play out. In fact, it's way more common for it to be the opposite. I've done a number of transactions with advisors who, going into it, will articulate to me why they're on a 1 to 3 year glide path to retirement because they're just sick of it, right?
Yep.
And when they end up partnering with a client we represent and they divest all the stuff that we're talking about that's infringing on their quality of life, they realize that, oh my gosh, I could actually do this for a lot longer than 1 to 3 years. I'm enjoying myself again. And so I think they just view it as it's placing themselves, their family, their team, their business at risk to give up control. And that's the very thing in keeping them from progressing. Joe Duran was one of my favorite comments that he used to make was a lot of people ask themselves, what do we need to do to get to the next level, however you define that? And he said the better question is to ask, what do we have to stop doing in order to get to the next level? And I find that to be really true. It's what you do this in your business, and all the practice management people what is your highest and best use? Delegate everything else. Spend 75-80% of your time on what you enjoy and what your highest and best use is. Well, very few people get there. It's unfortunate.
It's true.
Some
It's true.
forced to do it. But
yeah, that's a different business model.
Yeah,
but yeah.
right.
But you're right. I call it the work sweet spot. What is your sweet spot? And it's that spot where I grew up playing baseball. My dad taught me how to bat and everything, and it's that spot right on the bat where you hit the ball, you don't feel like you did anything. It just feels so natural, so easy, just glides, like as you mentioned. But so many are afraid. I think that's it. I think there's a lot of fear here. At least when I interview a lot of advisors for the book and the work that I do, there's a lot of fear involved in giving up control. And a lot of times they fear that, well, I'm afraid to give up whatever it is because the quality of work will go down. And the reality is, over and over again, if you can invest in people, you can teach them the skills, they're going to outdo what you do because you're trying to do so many things. They're going to do it better than you eventually. Maybe not at first, but eventually they're going to make it better. They're going to make that system better. They're going to get better training. And they're going to hire a whole team that's going to help them do that. I mean, it's just, I've seen it time and time again. So I appreciate that.
Being willing to take that step back in efficiency or quality, maybe, to go through that kind of J curve where you maybe your things get a little worse in a short run, but in the long run, it gets a whole lot better. It's being brave enough to start that journey and withstand the curve, downward, where a lot of people bail.
Right. Yeah, very true. And they get burnt out, right? They're going to try to do this for a long time on their own, solo, maybe even have a little bit of help, but they'll get burnt out and they'll want to leave the industry and maybe sell their practice and be on that 1 to 3 year glide path. So that's unfortunate. Well, as an advisor to advisors, I know, again, you've seen so many people and with your own work, but as in the industry yourself, what do you think that you struggle with? What are some of the biggest issues that you've had to either tackle or are still dealing with when it comes to balance?
Probably the exact thing we're talking about. So for me, and this may sound arrogant, but like what we do it truly is highly specialized. I mean, I can teach someone, so replacing like my knowledge, it's very easy for me to get on the phone with someone who's considering an M&A transaction and walk them through, deal structure and the landscape, how valuations are done and all of that stuff. I can teach someone to do that. it's when they start asking questions, posing different scenarios that have to deal with like being an owner of an RIA, and how to respond to those very unique situations that I find very hard to replace, So with me, divesting certain components because my business is like entirely relation driven, sort of like not too different than a financial advisor, but I don't have like an ongoing relationship I'm literally dealing with people who are selling their life's work. So it's often the most significant transaction they'll ever do personally. And so there's the economic side of it, there's the cultural side of it, then there's just the outright fear associated with the transaction itself. And so like I struggle with divesting the relationship aspect of it to someone who won't do it as good as I do, which is the classic problem, right? So, beyond that, I struggle with technology and, that's a thing in the financial services industry. Technology is always one of the things that drives people crazy because it's changing so fast. Like in my business, there's not much technology to begin with. There's some M&A software and things like that to help manage deals, but it's a lot of manual stuff. So I struggle with that, just scale and capacity, I guess.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about control and letting go of that control. So we won't focus there, but I think your point there with the tech, it's always changing, and it does drive them crazy. And the three things that I find with advisors that are distracting them: admin work, right? Paperwork, et cetera. As people are coming in, you're talking to them. It's usually something on paperwork, right, that they're trying to deal with. Email,
right?
Social media, or news media. And, 3 out of the 4 typically are done through some kind of technical, process of finding it online, going through LinkedIn, whatever it is. Or in applications nowadays, a lot of it's on iPads or whatever as you're meeting with clients. So there's a lot of tech involved. So maybe there's this connection here between tech and all of these distractions, right?
Invasive for sure. Shutting it all off has been my remedy when it comes to like the social media and the email and all the rest. It will, if you let it, you can just be on it almost 24 hours a day, and so just being willing to say no to that stuff and not let it encroach upon either your family, personal life, but even the efficiency of your business.
Yeah. Well, talk to me. Sorry. Yeah. You get in that black hole. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me, what are some things that have worked for you that's helped you to shut it off and not be thinking about it after it's shut off? What have been some best practices that you've used?
Probably my wife telling me I need to. That's probably the first thing. She will remind me when my screens are up too much, just like we remind our kids all the time, if we have too much screen time going on. As it relates to social media, I found that to be a big distractor. We just came through an incredible, tumultuous political environment where, that if you had that stuff on, regardless of which side of the spectrum you were on, it just overwhelmed you. And so I literally deleted certain applications and just decided I was not going to engage that period. And so I found that help. You measure your screen time now in hours and minutes, and that really saw a substantial decline. Just being willing to say, I'm not going to engage in that stuff anymore. It's not really additive. Being minute by minute up to date and aware of everything that's going on is not a good thing. I think, it's just not. And so being willing to say, I'm just not going to engage that. And then beyond that is, and the people that work for me would probably laugh as I say this, but when I have empowered them to act without fear of retribution for me, I think that's been one of the biggest changes in my business as well, is just having, the reality, as you said earlier, that if you give it to someone else, they will likely do it better than you. As damaging as that might be to my ego, to say, hey, you're better at this, take it off my plate. So I would say just being willing to say no, and then delegating certain tasks that involve interacting with email, for example. That kind of thing, was getting out of that was very helpful.
I'm curious, were those apps that were distracting, costing screen time, was that on your phone, or was it on the computer, or both?
I would say mostly on my phone, given that, well, before COVID anyway, the amount of travel that I did just demanded that I lived on my phone. I mean, frankly,
right
now what used to be phone calls, I would spend 7-8 hours a day on the phone call. Now it's 7-8 hours on Zoom meetings, like this.
Right.
Those things are on my computer, but it's having those sessions while you have your mobile phone sitting right next to you, that's constantly hitting you with notifications and emails and badges that just pop up, and it's amazing turning that stuff off, what life is like, and it's actually uncomfortable. I noticed when I did it for the first time how weird I felt. Almost, it's like if you leave your house and you go out to a restaurant and figure out you forgot your phone. That sense of panic that sets in for a few minutes, and then you realize, oh my gosh, this is pretty nice. My wife lost her phone the other day, and she couldn't find it for like a day and a half, and she was like, that was awesome. Just not having that thing around was spectacular.
Yeah, and we could spend a whole hour just talking about these devices, right?
Yeah.
And the notifications that come onto our phones. And it is one thing that I teach in the Make Time method is turn all your notifications off. Don't be dictated by your phone, because our phone has become our right or our left hand, depending on which hand we use the most. But it really has become part of our body almost, that we can't leave home without it. And that's so true. Even text messages, they've done research that found that if you hear that ding, you see the notification, that it's almost more addictive than heroin.
Oh, it's like the Pavlovian dog bell going off.
Pavlov's dogs. Yeah, that's exactly right.
I know when they first came out with the screen recorder, and I think I heard someone say, it might have been Joe on stage, like the average American spends like 4.5 hours a day, something like that. And I was like, no way, that's just patently false. If you're not talking about time on the phone, just looking at your screen.
That's it.
Then when I first started looking at it, I noticed that most mornings before I even got out of bed, because I keep my phone next to my bed, I would have 15 to 20 minutes of screen time, just, rolling over, waking up. And sure enough, I exceeded those averages many days. And so it is a true reality. It's the only way to describe it, as an addiction. It is.
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah, it definitely can be. And there's definitely some boundaries need to have in place, right, to make that not happen. Well, this has been good time together. I know I want to leave you some time to talk about how you actually help advisors with balance. I mean, we talked about the investment in people, or, basically, having a merger or acquisition occur, maybe even selling your practice completely. But maybe give us a quick how you actually help advisors out there who are considering having better balance by these options. What maybe tell us a little bit how that works.
Yeah, so we're buyer advisors, which simply means that we're hired by larger firms, and larger could mean anything from $1 billion to $7 billion. That's my largest client today, of assets, to go find their perfect partner, their ideal partner. So the way that I help advisors achieve the work-life balance is simply by leading them through the journey of what it means to transact or have a partnership, which is code for acquisition, whether it's a full acquisition or a partial acquisition. I lead them through that journey, help dispel the myths that exist about what it looks like on the other side of that transaction, and otherwise play the role of matchmaker. So my job, although we're hired by our clients, we effectively play the role of a seller advisor, because we, like for instance, we spend at least a month, maybe a month and a half with a prospective firm who's raised their hand and said, hey, we want to actually start this process with you, wherein, we're learning all about their business, all about their desired outcome economically. We're helping understand, we learn from them what their desired autonomy trade-off is going to be, because when you transact with someone, it's essentially an autonomy trade-off. And we play the role of this advisor, really helping unpack the M&A landscape and what it means, what it doesn't mean, and how to evaluate partnerships. Then we carry them through kind of like a speed dating round where we're matching them and what we've learned in the past month and a half with the clients we represent, in the hopes that we're going to identify 2 or 3 potential matches. We dive deeply into each one of those and have the firm tell us, okay, that's a client we'd like to start dating. And then we lead a very robust multi-month process to try to conclude with a successful partnership. So that's effectively how we do it. The uniqueness to our model is that we're paid for by our clients. So the other route that you could go, well, there's 2 routes. You could go negotiate directly with a buyer, which is perfectly fine. It's just complex. And if you don't know how to vet those, it could be daunting. You could hire a seller advisor. There's a lot of fantastic investment banking or business brokerage firms who will lead you through the process. It's just very expensive. You'll pay several $100,000 in retainers and success fees and all the rest. We do the same process. We're just paid for by our clients. So if it ends up working out, you get to the same outcome on a much better economic scenario. So that's how we do it. I will tell you that in the 50 plus acquisitions that we've been a part of, either as a buyer or a consultant, we've yet to have one unwind. We have, and I think it's because of the process and how much we pay attention to the seller needs and what they're looking for, and align that to the right buyer. And when that occurs, life on the other side of the transaction is not unproblematic, but it's a lot better, than what they experienced before. They like my advisor, who I brought to United Capital, when I met him, he was dealing with some issues at home, with his son who was ill. And that combined with the complexity of the business was just overwhelming him. And after he ended up doing the transaction, it took some time, but as he divested things, his ability to go on vacations became a reality. His ability to spend more time with his son who needed him by his side was more of a reality. So I'm proud of stuff like that. When someone tells me they were either on their way out of the business, ends up staying in for a much longer period, or they have a life transformation, those things are really cool to see happen. There's a lot of economics and stuff, but that's really what is the fun part about the business.
I love that. So Alan, the matchmaker for firms. I love this. That is a great analogy of how you help people really achieve better balance. People need you. This industry needs you. They need your services. And thanks for being on today and sharing, what you've seen in the industry, what you've seen in your own life, and a little bit of how people can, interact with you. The best website I'll include here is alarisacquisitions.com. Go there, check them out if you're interested in connecting with Alan and going through his dating programs. Alan, thanks for being on the show. I appreciate you being here.
Absolutely, Travis. It was a pleasure. Look forward to it again one day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.